Yeah, let's do this. All right, everybody, I'm Taylor. Welcome back to my channel. This is my weekly comic book review show for the week of, what the heck day is it? April 14th, 2021. Time it is simultaneously flying by and standing still because that's that COVIDian world we live in. My mic might be scratchy. I'm only recording this once because I got a giant stack of books to get through. So if it's scratchy, I'm sorry. I've not had the funds or the money or the time or the energy to go get my laptop fixed. Mostly because I spend all my money on these kind of things to entertain you fine folks. Well, I mean, okay. And they entertain me too. But I'd like to provide, I think I provide maybe a little modicum of value. Probably not. It's all just nonsense entertainment. And my opinions are just mine. I don't know. Go read whatever you want. Why are you watching this? Yeah, it's been a long day. Let's get into this. Worst to best. Here are my books for the week. Yeah, this is, what is it? Darkhawk, Heart of the Hawk. Okay, this just proves my theory. Darkhawk is not a good character. And the original writer, I can't remember his name. It's taped. I'm not opening it. I'm lazy. There's 3 different stories in here. None of them are good. The first one's awful. The first one is by the guy that wrote the original one. Just very dated writing and very dated writing style and type of book, and skip it. I mean, unless you really have a weird fascination with Darkhawk and actually think he's a good character, in which case you're probably not going to like the rest of my reviews anyways. All right, next. I wanted to like this more than I did. It's kind of Children of the Atom #2 by Vita Ayala and Bernard Chang. There's just something about this book. It's sort of like you're reading the X-Men book that's been covered in Vaseline. I don't know of a good way to describe it. There's just something off about this, and I can't put my finger on it. It's like weirdly shallow and dense at the same time. The characters aren't really developed at all. I don't know. They're trying a little bit with at least one of the characters, but I couldn't tell you the character's name. Or even their superhero name. The superhero names are idiotic, and I don't know if that's on purpose or if it's just trying to be a fun homage back to like the '60s. But they're just, I don't know. Lots of first appearances. I'm sure people are reading this. I'm sure other people like it better than I did too. But I don't know. All right. Yeah. Okay. Phantom of the Scan. If you've read the previews for this book, you have read the book. It is very light on story. The art's cool, but like you can read this in about 3 minutes. I'm not kidding. There's not enough here to really even talk about. It's just kind of, the guy's a psychic, probably, and there's problems with the psychics in the world. That's not a whole lot of spoilers. If I had one more sentence of spoilers, it would be the entire damn book. So, I'd say go thumb through this and wait for a trade if you have any interest. It might not be bad. It's Colin Bunn. He tends to write okay stuff, but there's just nothing there. Batman Detective. This is fine. It's Tom Taylor. It's not Tom Taylor's strongest work by any means. It's Andy Kubert. It's also not Andy Kubert's strongest work. It's sort of an older, somewhat crankier Batman going to London because there's a detective-y thing that needs sorting out, and it's detective-y, but it's just, I don't know, maybe I'm in a foul mood again today, but this just didn't really grab me. There's not much, just again, not much to it. There's a new mention of a character. I don't think maybe the new character has been in appearance, but if you do, you don't know who it is because he hasn't detectived that out yet because he's supposed to be a great detective. Get it? Because it's called Detective. I don't know. Trade bait, maybe. All right. Home. I really wanted to like this one more than I did, too. The story itself isn't bad. It's written by Julio Anta, and it's a delicate subject matter, and it's like takes place during the Trump presidency, and it's like a migrant family crossing the border trying to get into the country. Lots of politics involved in this book. I'm pretty darn liberal, and like if you think it's okay to put kids in cages, you probably shouldn't read this book. Or be subscribed to my channel, honestly. Like, just go away if that's your thoughts. The art on this just kind of didn't hold up well enough for me to really recommend it. The story's okay. Anna Wieszik, I don't know, lots of consonants, Polish maybe, but the art is just a little bit goofy, and it didn't really seem to fit the subject matter too well. So not a horrible story. Again, it's just and it's pretty delicate subject matter with a little bit of superhero stuff thrown in. Yeah, it just didn't quite all mesh. All right. Bosk, yeah, Bounty Hunters number 11. This is Bosk being a badass on something mission-y type thing where he's a badass and ruthless and a bounty hunter. Not a whole lot to it. It's fun. There's also about 8 billion Chip Zdarsky books this month. This is one of them. I think he might be overtaxing himself a little. I really normally like Chip. I just don't think any of the stuff he did this week was necessarily his strongest writing. This is not bad. It's still better than like any of the current Spider-Man titles that are out, or whichever one. There might only be one. I've stopped reading it. That's Nick Spencer, and that Nick Spencer just drags a boring at. Sorry, tangent. We are not talking about Nick Spencer Spider-Man. We're talking about this. This is a what if. It's not labeled a what if, but it's a what if. The cover is the coolest part of this. And it's not spoiling a whole lot. I mean, it's what if Spider-Man kept the symbiote suit. And again, the art by Pascal Ferry just is kind of the weak part of this. It's not awful, but it just doesn't really hold up to... yeah, it just doesn't hold up. And Matt Hollingsworth's on coloring, and normally I really like his coloring, but I didn't care for his coloring on this either. And I'm going to give this a chance, and I'll keep reading it because it is Zdarsky, and I think he might go somewhere interesting with the story. It's just this issue, a lot of setup. Okay, this came out last week, but I didn't get it because they were out. Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures. This is still better than the main Star Wars Republic. It really is. There's two younger, like adolescents, maybe pre-adolescents, kids. That's the word I'm looking for in this story that are at odds now because of a bit of an emotional betrayal that happened in an earlier thing. I'm not trying to spoil a whole lot, and this kind of deals with that. The art is really pretty solid by Tolobo. Although they make Yoda look a little goofy, but he's always a little goofy. And the story's actually not horrible. It's yeah, I do like this better than the main like quote unquote Star Wars High Republic. We'll see where it goes. I mean, this is definitely written to a little bit younger audience, but not a whole lot. It's more like a Star Wars Rebels audience. If you watch that show, if you like that show, you probably like this. Okay, Rorschach, number 7, Tom King et al. Still a great-looking book. You sort of are getting a little bit of what happens in here, more so. Issue 7 of a Tom King 12-issue series tends to be where you sort of think you start figuring it out a little, and that's kind of where this is. You sort of figure it out a little bit. It's still doing some timey-wimey stuff because that's what Tom King does. He goes backwards and forwards in time, but you sort of figure out some of the motivations of why people are doing what they do and have tried to like kill a presidential candidate, which happened way back in issue 1. So if you're not caught up, whoopsie. But the motivations are becoming more clear to the characters. It's still kind of light on what actually this issue actually is still kind of light, really. There's just not a whole lot that happens here. The design is fantastic. I mean, it's still one of my other favorite covers of the week, and they're consistently good. At this point, I really kind of wish I would have waited for a trade on this, just because I think with a lot of King's writing, it works better in trade. It's just he doesn't. You can digest it more easily as a whole than in little bite-sized chunks where you have to like try and like remember what happened last month. And how it fits in, because he tends to weave a bit of a puzzle. And this is a little bit of a puzzle, too, and sometimes it's easier when you can see all the pieces of the puzzle. Oh, look, I kept the puzzle analogy going all the way till the end of this. I beat that one to death. All right, another Chip Zdarsky book. Black Hammer Visions. I've still not read the main Black Hammer series, but this is like everyone playing in the world of Black Hammer. Different writers, different artists. Chip did the cover on this one. Great cover, too. So probably my third favorite cover of the week. Dave Stewart's on the colors. Johnny Crispus on the art. The art's not bad. Kind of simplistic, superhero-ish. This is sort of... He's sort of the this character. I can't remember who his name is. Slam. U.S. Slam, American Slam, Slam Diggs and Ham. It doesn't matter. He's the non-powered one. He's aging, and they've replaced him. Kind of ties into like with the U.S. agent thing that's going on in Falcon and Winter Soldier, and this deals with that. The aging and the effect of like what it means to be a good guy. and it's not bad. Zdarsky, I think, tends to be a little bit better when he has more room to breathe and a few issues to play with, and this is just a one shot, so it's not awful by any means. It's still better than like the rest of this lump. It's just kind of in the middle of this week's stack. So, Joker number 2. This is still not a Joker story, really, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's James Tynion and March. I can't remember the first name of the March, and then there's a backup punchline story. I don't care about that. I really don't. I nothing interesting happens in that story, and it's just no. DC's like weird new thing of like having half-finished backup stories, and every single book bugs the crap out of me. I know they used to do it back in the day, but this is not back in the day. Don't charge me like this is a $6 book because of that, and it shouldn't be. It should be a $4 book, and you should just get rid of that punchline nonsense. This is a Commissioner Gordon story. Lots of internal monologue going on, very heavy on the monologue, very light on the action. But I do enjoy learning about Commissioner Gordon, not Commissioner, whatever he is now. Gordon, Gordon. Yeah, Gordon. Gordon's motivations and his reasoning and like why he's going forward with like something that was set in motion in the last issue and why he's willing to do things that maybe he wouldn't have in his earlier days. So that I think is pretty interesting, and I think it's probably good not to actually have the Joker story be about the Joker and his antics, because I think that would get really annoying really quickly. Solid art, decent, just kind of a little verbose. All right. Another Zdarsky book. Speaking of Zdarsky and Room to Breathe, this is Daredevil. His run of Daredevil solid. This is still, it's splitting the story now between Elektra Daredevil and Daredevil in Prison. And they're both decent. Chichetto's on the art on this one, which is nice because he's got the whole art issue to play with on the art. He's the better of the artists that's been doing these. It's interesting to hear like his idea of like Electric's just a much more brutal and possibly grounded version of a hero that's already kind of grounded in Daredevil. Like it's just Daredevil without the guilt complex that Zdarsky's always been a part of Daredevil, but Zdarsky's really been focusing on. So Matt's in prison because of his guilt. And still trying to figure out how to be a hero while dealing with the guilt and while in prison and still trying to remain a good guy. Yeah, interesting stuff. All right, Maniac of New York number 3. This is still a really solid book. I had somebody complain in my comments that like it doesn't even look like an original character, and that is kind of the point. It's definitely a Friday the 13th or Freddy's Dead or whatever the heck. It's an homage. It's a love letter to the 80s horror movies, but it's told differently. And this is like, what if the 80s horror movies were kind of real and in New York? And I get that's like a stretching of the premise, but it's kind of what's happening. And like New York has learned to deal with this supernatural maniac, or possibly supernatural, that it seems unkillable. And like the different detectives and different people have taken on the case, but mostly people just avoid the maniac and run away. And this is not always possible, and people die, but that just kind of affects the real estate value more than anything else. And this is sort of like dealing with like, what the real life tolls would be, what the real life costs would be, interwoven with some personal stories of the people. And it's pretty interesting, and it still has a horror element. I really enjoyed it. Enjoy is my things where we get into the enjoy stack. Man, I don't know. I should have a rating scale. Enjoy is like a 4 out of 5. Thumbnail number 6. Creepy horror with leaves and autumn. You think you're sort of starting to get what's going on here, but at the end you're like, oh, yep, okay, now we're actually getting somewhere. I don't know how many issues this is. It should be finite. I hope it doesn't go on forever. I don't think it's going to. I think it's going to be a finite horror story. But, the mother and daughter move back to hometown and figure out things are not what they seem. I know, it's a horror trope. And, the one person that knew what was going on died, horror trope. And now they're trying to, like, survive the next round of it all, horror trope. But it's well done, and it's well written, and it's a bit tropey. It's not fantastic, but it is solid, and it is decent. Okay, Noctura number 2. I know this came out last week as well, but I wasn't able to get a copy until this week. This is getting a little more on the superhero end of things, and I didn't think it was as strong as number 1. I really didn't. But I did still like it. You're learning some of the backstory revelations, although like you're kind of like, oh, well, that, like, if you've ever read anything ever in the science fiction realm, you realize that like not everyone's who they seem, and there's a hidden backstory, and the person that you're doing secret things for probably caused it all. Not saying they did. I'm just saying probably. And there's someone chasing them. I mean, it's got a lot of Mad Max in the dark elements to it, along with like any other like chase sci-fi stuff. Waterworld, any of the post-apocalyptic, the Postman. There's a whole run of them back in like the 80s and 90s and 70s, and they're still going. But that you get a lot of that. It's kind of obvious in it influences. I like Tony Daniel's art. I know a lot of people don't, but I really like him on this. I still think this is a solid book. Scott Snyder, is flexing on his own and has some interesting ideas. It's kind of, this is like started to take a little bit of a more predictable turn than I would have hoped. A little bit. I'm still gonna read it, but it's a little more predictable. All right, Sweet Tooth, their return. This is the last issue. This is Jeff Lemire reimagining his own story and retelling it in a different mixing up the characters and remixing it. Who knows? He might do it again. There's the chance, but it's just another post-apocalyptic version of a story he's already told using the same characters, hence the return. And you're not certain if this is like a redoing or just a reimagining. It might be like a redo, and the characters might like be new version, like especially the Sweet Tooth, the main character here, might be a clone or might not be, or just might be a reimagining. And I think they sort of describe a little bit of that in the finale. It's a well wrapped up series, 6 issues. Wait for the trade. If you're not, don't go hunt it down now. But like just wait for the trade on this. I know some people don't like Lemire's sketchy art and stuff too, but I tend to like it. He's got a solid sense of pacing and stuff. Not the most super heroic, but very expressionistic. Loose lines, and I love his like painterly qualities and his like the fact that it looks drawn. It appeals to me. All right, Scumbag number 7. Aren't we all scumbags deep at heart? That's the message of this book. Kind of, probably. If there's a message. If there's a message to something with the main character that just wants to do blow and get in orgies, that's the message, is that doesn't necessarily make him a bad person compared to the rest of the people. This is where it's really kind of going off the crazy rails in the story in a good way. They're on the moon and trying to stop the weird moon hippies. The main character just wants to have sex and do a lot of drugs. So if you don't like that, you're not gonna like it starting at issue 7. It's great. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's awesome. It's they should make this into a TV series just because. I don't know if they could pull it off, but they should try. Okay, Thor number. Hang on, I've got a stack of stuff sliding around. Thor number whatever this is, 14. This is the end of the Donald Blake run. I like this. I could maybe have shifted it down a little bit more because Donny Cates, his endings aren't his strong suit. He's got a lot of build up, and then it's kind of his endings that I've noticed in the past couple arcs of this and King of Black and Venom, a little whimpery versus like bold. There's consequences, and like there's a next setup to probably the next arc that happens in here, and like there's some cool ideas and some cool stuff. And like you can tell he just wants to have fun with this guy and like make it cool. It's a cool Thor, and it's cool, but I wish it was cooler. I wish the ending was just a little more badass, if that makes sense. All right, this one may be a little high too, but I can't help it. It's Lock and Key, Sandman Universe Lock and Key, and Helen Gone issue 1. Yeah, okay, sorry, I had to read it. It's Joe Hill with the Lock and Key, like merging with like the Sandman universe, and this takes place before Sandman number 1, and actually before Lock and Key number 1 as well. It's a lot of setup in this issue, mostly setup. If you don't know the two playgrounds that are mixing, you might be a little lost. If you've never read Neil Gaiman's Sandman, or if you've never read Lock and Key by Joe Hill, this might just be way past you. So read those first, and probably collect this in a trade. The art is Gabriel Rodriguez, who did all the art on Lock and Key, which he's shifted up his style a little bit for this, and I think that fits the Sandman universe nicely. He's not quite as cartoony in the face as he was when he was doing the Lock and Key stuff. I thought this was nice and like pretty darn well done. It's not my book of the week, but it's because it's mostly set up. And like the last 10 pages of this are just previews for stuff. Like so, like it's a thick book, but like it's $7 because you're paying for like 15 pages of ads, which just annoys me. And so knock it off, IDW, with that. But yeah, if you've been longing for some old school like Vertigo goodness, pick this up. Proctor Valley #2 picks up right where Proctor Valley #1 kind of left off, and it's Grant Morrison just having a lot of fun in like the 70s. There's a horror story in like Lonesome Highway Roads, and teenagers trying to make a buck so they can go see Janis Joplin in concert. And yeah, this is like the continuation. I don't want to spoil this one because it is one of my favorite little fun things, and I think it's more fun if you kind of figure this one out on your own. I'll try and give you it's horror, but it's a playful horror, if that makes sense. It's not like some of these are like some of these rest of these in stack are more pure horror. This is not that. This is the movie The Stand. The sort of weird balance of tones that movie had, where it's like a little bit funny and kids on a road journey and like bonding and adolescence. It's not quite that, but it feels a lot like that. It feels like The Stand, or no, not The Stand. Is that The Stand? The one where the kids go to find the body. Whatever that's called. Stand By Me? Stand By Me? I don't know. The one with Will Wheaton. The only other thing that he acted in other than Star Trek. I think. Yeah. Whatever movie that was. Let me know in the comments. Because I can't remember it, and I'm not going to Google it. All right, and last, and like I know I'm not the only one to do this, because I launched Culture Philosopher last night, and it took me all day today to read these books to get this, and this was his book of the week as well, and I'm like, I should probably pick something different, so I'm not the same Z's. But it's the best thing that came out this week that I've read, and so I'm not going to like change my choices just because I'm a copycat. And I finally get number 2. Number 2 is fine. And number 3 is really where it starts to shine. This is the picture of everything else. It's sort of the continuation and like deviation from the story of The Portrait of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde, or Picture of Dorian Gray. I've not actually read that though, so I'm not 100% sure how faithful it is to the subject matter. But and without spoiling things a whole lot, this deals more with the artist that created the pictures versus like I think the Portrait of Dorian of Dorian Gray deals more with Dorian Gray and like the fact that like real life is reflected in the painting, and that if I'm getting the gist of that book, and I think I do, this is more the creator behind that, and like dealing with the world that's going on around that, and characters that are trying to like interact with that artist. There's art criticism in here. There's the turning of the guard. There's Picasso with a gun and being kind of a douche, and yeah, it's highly enjoyable. Definitely my favorite book this week. It's kind of the one that's stuck with me the most. Like wondering like what cost Utopia has, and if it's worth it, and dealing a lot with a lot of that, and a lot of like turn of the century Paris and London, and like just turn of the century art stuff, which is cool. It's not my favorite period art by any means, but it's still fun to see people play in this playground that's not usually a normal subject matter for comic books. It's done by Dan Waters. This one I might actually open. We'll see here. Because it's the last book. It is my book of the week, and I can put that much effort forth for y'all. Yeah, there's like, sort of Jack the Ripper-y stuff going on, and hang on. I'm trying to figure out the first name. I feel like I should. Dan Waters, and like the art and colors by Kishore Mohan. I'm pretty sure it's hand painted. If it's digital, he's doing a great job of fooling people with the stuff, and it's hard to do with digital stuff. So like I think these are actually hand painted pages. I could be wrong. Like you can fake some of these watercolor effects with the right software and the right touch, and that might be it. I don't know. It's hard to tell. Some of it might be a combination actually too. It probably actually is probably a combo of digital and hand painted. But like there's some like just sketchy gorgeousn's and gore and blood and violence and everything else you can ask for. It's the picture of everything else you could ask for. It's nice to see something that's not your standard comic book fare sometimes. And that's kind of I needed this week because like a lot a lot. There's only so many post-apocalyptic books you can read, and only so many superhero stories you can read. And I mean, I'm trying to read all of them, but there's it just gets kind of wears you down when you see the same thing over and over again. It's nice to have something a little different. So, all right, that's all I've got. I know this will go live sometime on Thursday. It's kind of late, and I'm tired. So, have a good day, night, week, and even your year. I don't remember where I stole that from, and I know, like I said, the audio's probably crackly. Whoopsie. Have a good time. Have a good. Have. I don't know. Be good to each other. Don't be a dick.